Welcome to St Gallen, where the local side finished third in the Swiss Super League last season, and they were the only club with a bigger reputation than Lokomotiva that were in search of a manager. But the question is, did we stay or did we go now? And the answer is we decided to stay, as many of you down in the comments from the last episode were encouraging us to do. I reached the conclusion that to move to St Gallen might involve a season that was a settling in year. And if we lost a year of our 2 remaining years of this series chasing a European trophy, then that would mean that we'd only have that 1 year to really go for it. Whereas at Lokomotiva, we've got 2 real possibilities of trying to push on in Europe. But in order to make progress, I was very much of the mindset that I needed to think outside of the box and do things differently. And with our transfer policy this summer, I think we've definitely done that. So last season, as disappointed as I was, it was actually a good season. We were predicted to finish 6th, even though we actually went on to come 3rd. Not comfortably. You could see that we were only 6 points clear of 6th place Gorica and missing out on European football altogether. And we were a massive 27 points behind champions Osijek. So we have much work to do. So I had a little think about our options during the summer. How could we build the squad? Who might we move on? Do we keep the core of the players that had got us to 3rd, or do we try and revamp the squad entirely? And I started looking at some of the stats, comparing us to some of the other teams in the league in terms of our transfer policies. And even though we'd not spent much, only £762,000, that net spend was the 4th highest in the Croatian top flight. You can see clubs like Dynamo right down the bottom had actually achieved a transfer surplus, whereas we'd taken the minor budget that we'd been given and we'd spent it all. But despite that, in terms of salary expenditure, we were one of the lowest spenders in the top flight, spending £3.3 million per annum. You can see that the team just above us, Rijeka, was spending almost 3 times that amount. Dynamo at the top of the table was spending not far off 10 times that amount. And we were never going to be able to compete with the top sides when they're able to attract a caliber of player that we couldn't even look at because their wage expenditure is vastly superior to ours. So we decided to throw a transfer Hail Mary and try and do things completely differently for the season ahead. So whereas last season you can see that we raised £3.3 million from shipping players out, but spent 3.9, some of it on some quite big transfers, such as splurging over £2 million on Dragan Samardzic. Well, this season we decided to do it differently. I sold everybody who I thought was underperforming last season that I might be able to get some kind of residual transfer fee for. And I also gave free transfers to everybody who I didn't think would feature in our plans this season to try and free up as much wage budget as possible. And so every time I sold a player, I took their transfer fee and I apportioned it to our wage budget, which meant that I could pay players more to come in and I could also bring in a greater depth of squad. And every time that we raised money through transfer fees, we just assigned it straight to the wage budget, which meant we have nothing to spend on transfers and that everybody that came in had to be a free transfer. Now, this means that in terms of net transfer spend for this season, we now sit bottom, having raised £2.56 million more than we've spent. And although we've not moved up the rankings when it comes to salary per annum expenditure, we're still in 6th, but we've bridged that gap between us and Rijeka considerably. And we're spending almost an extra £2 million per annum on the squad that we've assembled, still way behind the top teams. But rather than Dynamo spending almost 10 times what we were spending per annum, they're now only spending just over 4. And so far, it seems to be paying off as we've made a reasonable start to the season. And I think we've managed to bring in some pretty strong players on free transfers, probably better than we would have been able to sign if we were spending transfer fees, where we'd have probably gone for younger players that could be developed rather than ready-made first 11 players. We've played 5 league games so far this season. We are unbeaten, although we have drawn 3 of them. But the 3 games that we've drawn have been against very good teams. We picked up a 1-1 draw with Dynamo, a 0-0 draw with last season's champions Osijek, and a 1-1 draw with Gorica, which may not look like the strongest result on paper, but they've had a very good start to the season themselves and find themselves top on the league from us on goal difference. You'll see at the bottom of the table is Dinamo. They look like they're having a very, very tough year, yet to win a game this season. This evening, however, we turn our attention to European action where we have been handed a Europa League playoff first leg against Rangers. It is going to be an immortally tough tie for us. If we lose, then we're going to drop into the Conference League. But if we could win, then the money is going to start flooding in as we head on our quest to try and reach the final of European competition. But of course, you want to know all about those transfer dealings. Well, it started pretty much as last season ended, as we started offering out some of our players like Christian Kirkegaard, who moved back to Denmark. That was £3,000 off the wage bill. Our backup right wing back Vrankovic, who'd already decided that he wanted to leave at the end of his contract next season. While we managed to ship him out, he moved to Israel, a huge pay rise for him, a small transfer fee for us, and so it continued. As we went through the summer, we managed to get Tiny Tuk off the books. He moved out to Turkey, potentially valued at £8 million now. They might think that they've got the better of that deal, but we got £9,500 off the wage budget and £1.7 million that we could move over to our wage budget. Backup midfielders like Agon Aletsi left the club. We then managed to ship out a centre-half who'd been out on loan last season, yet was still earning over £3,000 a week. So that was a good deal for us. We got transfer fees for our youngsters like Petr Koliric, who'd just been out on loan for the last 2 seasons and was never going to feature for me in the first team, I don't think. At 5'4", I didn't think he would be the most robust option in the centre of midfield, so we realised his transfer fee. We let other fairly important players go. Indrich Tucci was our top scorer in our first season at Lokomotiva, but was injured for most of the last campaign, and I thought the £700,000 we might be able to bring in for him from a transfer might be more useful to us than Tucci if he was to have another injury-hit campaign. In total, we managed to bring in about £3.2 million. It all slid over to the wage budget, and here is what we brought in for free. Okay, not quite for free with the first one. This is the only player we paid a transfer fee for, but it was only £44,000 as we swooped for Dinamo's backup goalkeeper, Fabian Bunty Buntic, who we're hoping is going to be a more secure option for us between the sticks this season. We also set about rebuilding our central defence, so Charlie Creswell came in on a free transfer having been released by Leeds, and at £10,000 a week, he now becomes our top earner. We also headed to England to bring in another centre-half, Tosin Adarabioyo, breaking with our policy of traditionally bringing in young players. This time we've swooped for a veteran, but one that could be worth more than £5 million. Without being able to afford to bring in the left-back that we had on loan last season, we had to swoop once more for a free transfer, and Valencia released Jesus Vasquez. With our backup right-back leaving, we swooped for another Spaniard, Mark Pubil, who could also fill in at centre-half, is certainly quick enough, but also gives us real competition with Samardzic at right-back. In midfield, we signed a Tunisian in the shape of Haj Mahmoud, but unfortunately, he picked up an injury during one of our pre-season friendlies, was going to be out for 5 months of the season. But we bolstered our ranks with other free transfer midfielders, such as Nunzio Lela, who left Venezia and moved to Croatia. But it was up front when we really revamped the squad, bringing in Joe Taylor, who'd been released by Luton, Benny Traore, who just left Sheffield United, Alberto Mari, who, like Vasquez, our new left-back, had been released by Valencia, so we offered them a contract. And to make sure we could still register a full squad for European competition, we hunted for some Croatian free transfers, the best of them, possibly Bartel Kardrum, who left Inter and now moved to Lokomotiva. But what was crucial to our transfer strategy was bringing in fringe players who were on non-contract terms, so are not going to cost us anything unless they make an appearance. Sven Sopic is one, but we've also bought in Marin Zamba with natural fitness 16, Luka Lukanic, and Luka Huber, who gives us another option down the right flank. And added into the mix, we've still retained the services of lots of the players that were important to us last season, such as Willy Cambuala, now 24 years old and a stalwart in central defence. Vladan Babanya is entering the veteran stage of his career now, but with the injury to Mahmood, he is going to be vital for us playing in defensive midfield over the next few months. We've still got Llama, who could play as a right wing back, could play central midfield or up front, or if we switch our tactic and start to play with some wide players, he might be able to fill in out there as well. And we've got other favourites from last season, such as Daniek, who's going to be patrolling the central midfield. And we're still developing Camillo Reyes in the centre of the park as well. So all in all, I think we are much stronger than we were last season. The fees that we could realise if we were to sell some of these free transfers indicate that I think they're fairly good quality players. I also like the mix that we've bought of nationalities. We've got players from England who can perhaps help each other when they don't speak the language. We've got 3 Spaniards that can all help each other integrate as well. So I think we're reasonably well placed for a good campaign this season. But tonight, it's a game against Rangers, and I think this one is going to be tricky. So Rangers have actually already made it through 3 rounds of qualifiers just to reach this stage, and our task tonight is not going to be made any easier by the fact that we've picked up an injury the day before the game, and it's a reasonably serious one. Nets Amaya is going to be out for up to a month now, and we were going to start Nets up front for us tonight. Instead, we're going to bring Benny Traore in, who's quick, has got acceleration and pace of 14 and can finish, and the composure and the off-the-ball movement are fairly decent as well. We've got plenty of options up front. We could have gone for Alberto Mari, or we could have brought in the young Croatian Bartel Kardum. But instead, we're going to give Traore a go up front alongside JT Joe Taylor, themselves very quick with pace of 14 and acceleration of 15. And again, the finishing, the composure, the off-the-ball movement is very good. They're also going to work very hard as well, playing as a pressing forward alongside Traore. We're bringing in Daniek for their first game for a little while after they were out with a knock. And hopefully, as tonight's game is going to be out there in Glasgow, we can keep things tight at the back with our new look defence and try and nick a goal. And we are underway, and an early highlight comes in straight away. And 30 seconds into the game, I think VAR's going to check this, but we might have taken the lead from an indirect free kick already. I'd barely settled into the dugout before this highlight appeared on the screen, and it's been awarded as Adarabioyo heads against, I think, a post, and is there to slot home the resultant chance. And we've taken a dream lead in this game after just 30 seconds. 2 shots already, and we're coming forward once more, and it's JT ratting around there up front, gets the ball back into the midfield, and here is JT again, and he's had a little sight of goal from 25 yards. He's fired it just past the post. What a whirlwind start we've made to this game, and we are going in hunt of a second once more. We've won the ball in the centre circle. Vasquez feeds the very busy Taylor, and Daniek puts us 2-0 up inside 8 minutes. The referee's going to VAR once more. Had Daniek gone too early? He had not. And Taylor is doing an awful lot of the heavy lifting early on in this game as he drops into those midfield areas, helps win the ball back for us, and gets the ball to Daniek, who swivels on a bank vault and manages to fire into the goal. Traore, Lello are both involved as well. Daniek times his run to perfection, and what I thought was going to be a very difficult tie started incredibly well as we're 2 up already and going for another as JT swivels those hips, finds a little bit of space from an indirect free kick and fires high and wide. But we are looking menacing during the early stages of this game. But now we've got a bit of defensive work to do as they come forward. They play the ball back to King. They find Ramsey out on the right. Hadji strikes from distance. It rattles the woodwork. Just a little warning that Rangers have got some good players in their ranks as well. And now the game settles a little bit. We hit the half-an-hour mark. We've not really produced an awful lot since the early flurry of highlights. But if we could get into half-time at 2-0, that would be beyond our expectations at the start of this game. We're racing towards that half-time whistle now. We're in stoppage time. Well, we've got one more chance before we hit there. Traore goes over to take a corner. He swings it in. Babanya rises and thumps a header into the far corner of the net. And Rangers are shell-shocked as we hit a third of the evening. Babanya had 4 players marshalling him, and he rose above them all as he thumps his header past the goalkeeper. And that is a very good 45 minutes work. So we got a lot of good performances from that first half, but Dragan Zamarcic is not one of them. He went in at halftime at 6.4. He then dropped to a 6.3 at the start of this half. He's bounced up to 6.4 again. But that's not the strongest of performances, and we have options on the bench. Our Spanish fullback, I think, is probably just as good as Zamarcic, and he's even slightly quicker. Now, that's a pretty simple change for us to make in order to bolster our ranks down the right-hand side. We've had a pretty even second half so far. Neither side has produced a highlight. And on 70 minutes, I think, we can get some fresh legs on the pitch and see if we can take this 3-0 lead back to Croatia. So based on match stats alone, I think we might be a little fortunate to be so far ahead in this game. But we will not look a gift horse in the mouth as we try and launch a little attack of our own. We've actually had a shot that's cannoned off a defender so hard that it's helped Rangers launch a counter-attack. But Banya snuffs that out. We play the ball forward. Pupil launches a little over-the-shoulder kick towards the halfway line, but it's actually resulted in yet another counter-attack as Brown bounces into the area, fires his shot wide of the goal, and I think we can make our last substitution. Babanya looks to be the player that is tiring. We will go with Zumba in his place. All energy, the bustling midfielder. We've had 8 shots now, 5 of them on target, but Rangers have had 8 of their own. And on 85 minutes, we need to try and keep this 3-goal lead tight. If that's as far as we can get in this game, then it's still excellent progress. But alas, they have stung us on the counter-attack, and it goes to 3-1 in this tie. And it looks like the return leg out in Croatia might be a little bit of a tougher affair. If they pull another one back before full time, then we really would be in trouble, I think. And to that end, we might just try and tighten it up for the final 5 minutes. Okay, hopefully those changes will be enough to get us through stoppage time and we can take a 3-1 lead back to Croatia. If you'd have offered us that before the game, I would have been only too enthusiastic to take it. But having been 3-0 up and then to concede that goal late, well, it means for the second leg, things are slightly more in the balance. Nevertheless, that is quite a good victory, and we are going to play that second leg off camera. And then when you return, hopefully we'll be in the next round of European competition in the Europa League. If not, we'll see whether the FM gods place us into the Conference League, and we can try and make progress in that competition instead.